So how are you doing? Happy to hear it.
And there we go. The last of it, 30 seconds to spare.
Well, he's relaxed.
Congratulations, John.
12 seconds.
No.
No, yeah.
Well, now you're
Now you're
Might as well not sit down because we're going to stand up from the plane, so don't sit.
Don't waste your energy.
That's right. All right, it is 6:30. I'm calling this meeting to order. Let's stand for the pledge. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, next on the agenda is roll call. Maybe we have a roll call.
Mayor Bachra,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Knutson,
Here.
Trustee Smith is excused. Trustee Valentine,
Here.
Trustee Stelter,
Here.
Trustee McInnes,
Present.
Trustee Schwartz.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Okay, we have a fourth. Next up is the approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion, please?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the agenda as posted.
And a second.
Do we need to modify to remove the consent?
Let me get your consent.
Okay.
That was, all right.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. Next up is announcements. You will see that there is on Sunday, March 3rd, from 1:30 to 3:30, a work session focused on the future land use elements of the master or comprehensive plan. I hope everybody shows up for this because it's really, really important. This is probably one of the most important sections of the whole master plan. And we need to get as much input as we can. Because this is the future of zoning, this is the future of growth, this is the future of everything. So I encourage you all the time.
Yeah, and so this would be not just for residents, but people within that growth management area to talk about what our future land use could look like. So you're right, Mayor, we need to encourage as many people as we can to attend.
And it's at Blue Sage, it's not at the town.
On the weekend.
Blue Sage, on the weekend.
In the afternoon.
Sunday afternoon, maybe it'll be snowing, like, so everybody needs to come. Does anyone else have an announcement? Yes.
Two. First, on the 23rd of March, which is a Saturday, the Fertile Edge Community Land Trust is going to have a public session at the library. It'll go from 10:30 to 11:45. And it's covering what the Fertile Edge Community Land Trust, which is the local land trust that was just formed this year, can do in support of affordable housing. So that's an event that will be facilitated by the board members of the Fertile Edge Community Land
And
Trust.
what is that date again?
It's on Saturday, March 23rd from 10:30 to 11:45 at the library. And everybody's invited.
All right, thank you.
Second event is way further down the road. It's Friday, May 17th. And Paonia is having a dark sky film festival at the Paradise Theater that night. And that'll be going from 6 till 7:30 with some stargazing afterwards.
Okay.
So mark your calendars.
Anyone else have an announcement? Yes.
Yeah, so on Monday, the 26th, so I believe it's 2 Mondays from now, Cole Berger, who's running to represent District 5, will be at Espresso Paonia, just kind of there to meet and greet. So if anyone wants to come and meet somebody who's running to represent us all, Monday, the 26th, at Espresso Paonia, he'll be there.
Excellent. Time.
We haven't hashed out a time yet. When I have one, I will let people know.
During operating hours, I'm assuming.
Hopefully, yes.
All right, anyone else? All right, seeing none, we are going to move on to public comment. This is an opportunity for anyone in the public who wants to address the board on a subject that is not under actions and presentations. You have 3 minutes. Would anyone like to address the board? Okay, seeing none, let's just move on.
Is this a? Okay, so right before I came over here, I saw something on Facebook about the Paonia Skate Park and the damage that was done from a skid steer, they think by the town being driven through it. And so I'm just curious if we know anything, so if they posted pictures of the tracks and it hit a rail and so I don't know who else would have driven a skid steer, but I don't imagine town employees would. But I think if it is town, or let's clear it up one way or another.
I will look into it.
Okay. Great.
Thank you. All right, next up is the consent agenda. So,
Corey.
oh, I'm sorry, Corey.
So I seen that post as well. We're currently looking into it, trying to figure out why they was driving the skid steer on the skate park for one. I know they was doing some work in that area, but I'm not sure why they was driving it across the park. So I'll find out and let you guys know as soon as I know more.
Thank you, Corey. Much appreciated. All right, next up is a consent agenda. Here's the time to make the motion with the exception. You want to do that, Kathy?
I would love to.
Go for it.
I move that we remove the January 23rd, 2004 regular meeting minutes from the consent agenda.
And then up to approve the rest.
And to approve the rest of the consent agenda.
Okay, we have a second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, next up is staff reports. Town Administrator Wynn, go for it.
I'm gonna have to stop sharing real quick so I can change the screen here. Apologize, I had all of this set up and now it's not where I need it to be. We haven't approved the consent agenda and we haven't discussed the minutes that we pulled off. What are we? Oh, that's a good point.
What?
We have not approved the consent agenda.
Yes, we did. We just.
No, we just, so we approved that.
Right.
What about the discussion of the minutes though?
She took her motion was to take the minutes off of the consent agenda and to approve the rest of the consent agenda.
Okay, so are we discussing the minutes?
No.
now? Why not?
Because they won't be ready until Ms.
Okay.
Better.
There's a staff report in front of you, trustee Knutson. I was unable to get them finished in time. And
Okay.
I didn't want to talk about deleting them and having to start them over again, so.
Great. Thank you, sorry for confusion.
Okay. All right, so this is the February Town Administrator's Report. It is available online. You did receive an email earlier today that had it in a different way, but it was so that you could see our project needs assessment forms. I couldn't merge them into one without it just copying in the fillable form. I did my absolute best to look like some of those Valentine heart box candies for the time. But this goes into great detail about the projects that we have going on that have really consumed a lot of staff time and the mayor's time for some supplemental funding. But what I'll go over first is our Fifth Street and Grand Avenue realignment. As I've expressed in previous reports that once we got to an FIR meeting with CDOT, that's a field inspection review meeting with CDOT, we learned that the estimated cost of construction was not $1,040,000, but was really $2.5 million. And so what we've been doing is working towards meeting all of the design criteria that CDOT requires as an off-system applicant or a local agency applicant. And so we've been meeting that criteria. Different to this report, what you'll see online is that I've included all of the attachments. So all of our project coordination meetings are now available online as attachments to this report. So there's a hyperlink when you go to the town website underneath my report that has attachment A. It's the project coordination meeting minutes, including the FIR meeting with CDOT. one of the biggest reasons for the change orders that you've seen for design is once we had that initial kickoff meeting, late July, early August of last year, we learned that what we had designed for this realignment project wasn't enough. CDOT was going to require us to go through that entire local agency process. And that's why you had a change order come in from SGM, our design engineer, that brought that from $66,000 in design up to 148 and change, $148,534. So you guys approved that change order back on August 22nd of last year, and we've been making progress towards meeting the design criteria of CDOT, including finding and designing resolutions to conflicts with like the Paonia Ditch Company and existing stormwater utilities, as well as a conflict with Black Hills Energy with the gas main going through. So we're trying to clean up not just the intersection, but also things you don't see underneath the intersection, including some water mains running through the area, and then a fire hydrant that I said in the previous report was 1986. It was actually installed in 1982. So it's even older. It's time to cycle that out. And again, all of this is available online, including the attachment that shows all of our project coordination meetings that we've had with our design team. We have successfully secured the right-of-way from the school board. You guys approved that last year as well. I think we finally saw sometime in early December, probably the first meeting in December. You had approved that, and it was sent to the county for recording. We still have some right-of-way to acquire from the county that is with them in perpetuity, but CDOT seemed to be okay with having a maintenance agreement for that stretch. I've talked with CDOT and one county official, and it seems like if all three of us can come to a resolution, we should be able to change the agreement between CDOT and the county, and so that we would just have a maintenance agreement, but we would acquire the highway up to the bridge, so the entire scope of work. For this project. So still things are in motion, things are being designed, and if you want to dive into what we've seen in our project coordination meetings, those are now available on the website as well. The next big project that we've been working on is phase 1A of our water improvement plan. That's the 2 million gallon tank relining project. And it dawned on me while writing this report, I don't think any of the board has seen a full project needs assessment that was submitted to CDPHE for their approval. So that is now an attachment as well. And so you can review all of the 140 some pages that went into that report, including our what you have seen is the 20-year cash flow analysis that we worked on to get to as a big component of that report. That is also available online for you to review as well. And you also received an email. This project was identified as probably the lowest hanging fruit, but also the most critical to have renovated. So it is our only finished water tank in service. And one of the things we found during design is that we would need a temporary tank. So we're going to take this 2 million gallon tank out of service. You've still got to be able to provide clean drinking water. So where do we store it? We've kicked around a bunch of ideas and looked at cost estimates for leasing property near the water plant. But it was in a hayfield. And so we would have to remediate any damage we've done. We would have had to have additional pumps and piping. So it made more sense to move towards purchasing or acquiring more property around at that elevation of our landborne water treatment plant to house a temporary tank. And then knowing that phase 3 of our water improvement plan calls for another finished water storage tank. So if we already acquire the property now, sits our temporary storage tank, it can be ready to receive a water tank in the future. So we're trying to put all of our ducks in a row while we're going for our state revolving fund. Now this one has some bad news. And I've explained to you that we went out in October, actually my daughter's birthday, and presented to a state panel to receive EIAF funding. We were successful in receiving that for $956,000. because our fiscal year 22 audit isn't done, and I'm going to go into the audit here in the next part of my report. One of the conditions of receiving that grant funding is that the audit has to be done, and it had to be done by December 31st. I submitted a voluntary consideration of rescission of that grant award to DOLA after receiving pressure from DOLA on where the audit was, saying, hey, look, we're trying to meet we're trying to meet the conditions for this grant. However, we still don't have our fiscal year 22 audit done. That's not to say that the town hasn't done its very best, and the auditors haven't been working on it as well. So DOLA hasn't accepted that yet, so I don't want to jinx it, but hopefully we can have our audit done by our next meeting. So that's the bad news. The other bad news is that any sort of additional funding through the state revolving fund is contingent upon having a fiscal year 22 audit complete. Okay, fiscal year 22 audit. So when I got here in July, we were already 12 days overdue for the audit. It was already due to the state. We submitted an extension request, which would have only extended us until the end of September. It was denied by the state auditor's office. Also learned that our auditor, it's CSD out of Grand Junction, completely closed their audit division. So they're just an accounting firm with CPAs, just closed their audit firm. So by August 16th, we had an RFP out where we received 3 declinations and one actual solid proposal from Hinkling Company. They've done a phenomenal job. We've done our best to turn around as quickly as possible things that they've asked for. And as of the 8th, what I've learned is that our audit is done, the draft is done by the senior auditors, and it's been turned over to the partners for review. They were kind enough to give me that draft so I could start preparing the management discussion analysis letter. A very critical component of the audit is, the town's rebuttal to anything that's found deficient within the audit. It doesn't look like there's anything. It's just I need final numbers to be able to finalize my MD&A. But we've been working on it, and they've done their very best to turn that around as quickly as they can. Once it's done, then as a piece of this, the state has withheld funds from the road and bridge fund, as well as sales tax distribution for not only like general fund operations for the end of last quarter, but also for public safety as well. So those sales tax distributions are currently being held. Good news is we're going to have to do a budget amendment because we're going to see more revenue this year than what was planned once we get it in. So there's a lot holding on this fiscal year 22 audit.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's bad news, but you still got to understand what's going on. Now, due to the inordinate amount of work that we've had to get fiscal year 22 audit to where it's at, we've already been told by both Professional Management Solutions, our third-party bookkeeping firm, and our auditors that they're not going to be able to get to us until June 1st. So knowing that now, what you'll see in March in one of the upcoming meetings is a request or an application to send to the state auditor's office requesting an extension to the end of September. So we'll get it in plenty of time that they should have an ample opportunity to review it and hopefully approve it. So that's what's been going on with our audit. And I've explained, in this staff report or this administrator's report that capacity and workload are issues for town hall employees. I'm going to have to make some personnel changes. There's going to be some job duties changing as well. So to make sure that we're supported where we need to be supported, especially in finance. I also included a picture at the bottom. I had to end on a happy note, I guess. Playing dodgeball. So while the town of Peonia was represented at the PK8 dodgeball tournament, we had 2 from town hall. Ruben was our captain. So it was myself and Ruben, Matt Taylor from Public Works, Derek from Public Works as well, and then was it Thomas Seeley and William Gillen from the PD. Now, this wasn't the only team. One of our other public works employees also put a team together and made it a little bit further than we did. So, it's really hard when you've got an extra 65 pounds. And the last time we played dodgeball, to try to jump, control position, and attack a line. We went 2 and 2. So, but anyway, like I said, I had to end it on a fun note, and that's the end of my report. I think our next report's police chief.
Okay, well, any questions for the town administrator? Yeah.
Will we need to have a special council meeting when the, because it's like, what's our role with the audit? And do we need to just kind of know that that's going to be happening?
Yeah, so if we get it before the next board meeting, I will try to get it out to you as soon as possible. We'll need to have a special meeting to accept the audit. And so I don't think it's going to be done before our next meeting. I certainly hope it's done before the 29th. There is a 29th day in this February. So I'm really hoping that we can meet it before then.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to Police Chief Leininger.
Okay, so for last month, Officer Heiniger successfully completed his school resource officer training in Golden, Colorado. Also week-long training. He is now a nationally certified school resource officer.
Matt, can I add to that real quick?
Mm-hmm.
The 15th is also National School Resource Officer Day, so just keep that in mind.
Yes, so that was a departmental goal starting in 2022. We've been working towards that, and so far it's already paying dividends. We're looking forward to fostering that relationship between WK and NIPSIS, and not just the students, but I try to make sure we explain this as well, but with the parents of the students as well. I want to make sure they know they can come talk to us. If they have questions or concerns, he's available to them as well. Anything at all. He is available. He's up to schools. He's in and out. That being said, he also helps out with our regular patrol functions. He listens to the radio. He backs up on calls. He takes calls. He runs traffic. So he's doing double duty, and it's been tremendously helpful. But a town our size, a department our size, that's to be expected with our officers. That's what we ask them. We also got our bulletproof vests delivered. Those were approved by the board. Now all officers have up-to-date current vests that are policy approved and compliant. We'd also like to remind everybody, property owners as well as tenants, for those of you who rent, if the sidewalks have snow on them, you have a limited amount of time to get those shoveled off. We just like to remind everybody, try and shovel those off. We have a very active community. People like to get out regardless of the weather. Try and keep those sidewalks cleaned up. The officers will be looking for that. We're not being heavy-handed with it. We may knock on your door and just let you know, hey, if you can, try and get that shoveled. If you have questions, concerns, if you're not able to do that, please let us know and we will work with you to figure something out. Last thing I'd like to add is, this is kind of an every winter thing, but particularly this year, and last year was worse, but we're noticing a lot more wildlife in town, especially deer on the roads. So we're asking our drivers to slow down a little bit and increase that gap between cars. We've had a lot of animals that are hit on the road. So just try and be aware of that. We also have a lot more people on the road, particularly on 2nd Street and 3rd Street. After the sun goes down, we have a lot of activities, a lot of kids around. So slow down, watch out for everything.
Okay, questions for the chief? So I have a couple things. So I see that there are some new speed limit signs up, especially along Grand. How is the signage going around town as far as getting all the new speed limit signs up?
It's going okay. I've been working with Corey on that. We're working on establishing where those signs are best going to fit, while we also don't want to populate every single block or corner with a speed limit sign. Because again, as I said earlier, we have a lot of people who make use of our sidewalks for pedestrian, our bicycles, our kids. And the more crowded and busy we make those intersections, the more signage we have. Sometimes it becomes difficult to see everywhere, particularly given our parking and the way it's arranged. But we're working on identifying some places where we may be able to put some new posts to attach signs. And we're also waiting to get a total sign count before we order all those signs at one time. But it is in progress.
Thank you. The other question I have, and this is, thank you for the police report that you guys, that Joanne and company made for us, for me, for the grant. And so that brought up a question. So as I was reading the police report, I saw on page 54 of the packet on 1/19/24, there was a traffic accident on Grand Avenue. Where was that on Grand Avenue?
I'll check on that one, see.
Okay, because I would add it to my traffic counts.
Yeah, I'll add that.
The interesting thing I found is when I did look up and the traffic tickets, the traffic accidents, and then the parking problems, that there's 28% more at that intersection at that end of town than there is the rest of Grand Avenue combined.
Yes, it's very busy. And it's not that the 100 block, 200 block of Grand are not busy, but it's almost the congestion we have here restricts the flow of traffic to the point of slowing it down naturally. Whereas as we exit town to the north, speeds tend to pick up, it tends to open up a little bit, and there's a lot of confusion with that intersection. Probably why it was identified as something that needs changed. And the other thing I'll point out on that is a lot of those, like a traffic stop may show as first in Grand or third in Grand. The traffic stop may have been initiated on Grand Avenue, but the traffic stop didn't actually occur until they turned off of Grand. So that's why we include those streets off of Grand as well, because it's where we actually get the vehicle stopped. That's what the traffic stop will report as, and that's where those stats come from.
So thank you. It was very helpful. All right, moving on. Next up is presentation by Libby Collins. I don't see Libby.
I don't think she's here.
No, and I don't see her online either.
She may not be available. She was having some health concerns last time I met with her, so we may have to postpone this to another.
Okay, yeah. All right, then next up is agenda item number 1, consideration of approval of town's response to the resource management plan amendment for the Encompagre Field office. Mr. Nguyen.
So this is another one where I'm gonna have to.
And I'm assuming that what we got on our tables here is the formatted letter that was in the packet.
Oh, nice.
Oh, do you want it?
Sure.
All right, while you're searching, I'm gonna let Dave carry on.
Yes. So essentially, I want to really recognize the work that Natasha Leger, who's here with CHC, and also the work that Paige Smith did on this letter. They did a lot of research on it. As you know, as your local designee for oil and gas, if I'd written this letter, it would have been 4 paragraphs. It would have been 8 or 9 sentences. And it would have been possibly too cursory and not go into the detail that we have here. So I really applaud the work that the two of them did. The packet showed the content, but didn't have the actual formatting. It was a little hard to read in the packet, but the formatting is here with the footnotes and everything. This is in response to a lawsuit that the BLM got about how they were handling oil and gas in this area. And they had to come back to the public and open up scoping and open up for public comment. The big concern I have is that they're not really taking into account the accumulated impacts of what oil and gas does. And that's one of the big pushes of this letter. So I hope that we can unanimously approve this letter. And it might be worthwhile to have, well, Paige won't be back in time.
Right.
We, in the previous letter, every single one of us signed it, but I think approving the mayor's signature on behalf of the board, I think.
Okay,
So my recommendation is approval of that.
okay, well, I'm gonna take public comment. Would anyone from the public like to comment on this?
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
So, this is going to be the second part of something that's already been done. So as a cooperating agency, we've already uploaded a lot of information to a file server for BLM that included like our existing comprehensive plan, drafts of our housing needs assessments, our Parks in Motion plan, our Pay Union Motion plan, as well as a number of supporting documentation that were packaged really nicely into this letter. So I met that obligation.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, all right, comments from the public? Okay, seeing none. Questions, comments from the board?
I think it's a great letter, a really great letter. It felt personal, didn't feel like a form letter. It's wonderful. And thanks for the formatting because it was driving me crazy.
I was gonna mention it. I do actually appreciate being able to see like what the letter will look like when it is actually sent. Yeah, and I do want to echo the thanks for the amount of work that went into this. This is extraordinarily thorough and yeah, exactly what we need.
And I would echo the same thing, having worked on the first response back when they were first putting out this RMP and putting together the letter for the town. It reiterated everything we said in that letter and has gone way above and incorporated a lot of data that we didn't have at the time. So this is an extraordinary letter and I'm very pleased with it. Thank you so much, Natasha. And Paige, wherever you are, in Mexico, drinking a margarita probably.
I think we'd also want to recognize Cody Perry, who's the new lands person. Ben Katz is still working locally, remotely for a new group, but Cody is taking over, and Cody was in transit to his new job and responded to us on Thursday, and then Friday morning, his first day on the job, added some of the pieces we needed. So the thing I really liked about it too was real good cooperation between both the CHC, WSCC, and the board. So I really appreciate Cody stepping up to the plate on that on his first day on the job, doing some pretty complicated work.
I do have a question, Howard. There was a line in here about question. It said economic impact to the town. It was had a question mark beside it. It was on page 61. Here we go.
So
I'm just quickly reading that paragraph.
That's the 1,
I see
2,
it.
3.
All right, yeah.
Paragraph.
Yeah. That from it was, and yeah, that was it. Just like 133 was close, but that's okay. I think the letter is sufficient without anything else.
okay.
So would somebody like to make a motion?
Should I make a motion that we approve the letter to the BLM with public permit scoping on Concrete Field Office, RMPA, environmental impact statement.
All right, do we have a second?
Seconded.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, next up is consideration of recommendation of an ordinance being developed to set a process for the Board of Trustees to approve legal fees incurred by the board. This, or Trustee Knudsen, you're up again.
I started thinking about my last 5 or 6 years on the board and how a lot of discussions, thanks Natasha, and how many times this board and previous boards have hashed out legal issues and had questions for our attorney, and then ends up creating assignments for the attorney, which costs us $238 an hour, without really the support of the full board. Now I can see where the mayor and the clerk and the police chief, and who am I forgetting? And the town administrator all need legal access to legal advice. But when it comes to the board, what I'm concerned about is one board member raising a legal issue and then costing the town additional fees on top of officers who typically use a lawyer. So what I'm proposing on this is that we ask for the development, this is kind of funny, we ask our lawyer to develop an ordinance about this, so that in the future, boards don't incur legal opinions just based on one person on the board pushing it. The person has to make a motion, it has to be seconded, and the board has to approve it and then go ahead with that. So it's just a way we've been doing really well with our new town administrator on capping our legal fees. Next year, or even this year, we're also going to be looking for a water attorney. So it's like anything we can do to keep these legal fees like tamped down to some degree, I think it's really important. So I think this would be a good step on the board being more cohesive about assignments they make to our lawyer. And that's the end of my spiel.
Okay. All right, comments from the public? All right, seeing none. Comments from the board, questions, discussion? Okay, if there's none, then somebody make a motion.
I do have one clarification. So the budget wouldn't just be the general fund and the water fund, it'd actually be four. So it would be our three enterprise utilities, that's water, sewer, sanitation, and the general fund. So that's the only clarification.
All right, so I'd like to make a motion to,
Our town attorney has a question.
oh, yes, Nick.
Not a question, and I fully support an ordinance or a resolution like this. I think it could be a resolution depending on how the board wants to look at it. My only recommendation is a little bit of flexibility, because there are often times that a board member will raise an issue that's actually very important to look into, something that, you know, we weren't paying attention to at the staff or the, you know, the consulting level, that the board members will be more attuned to. And then it's actually, you know, really it's in the town's best interest to have that issue looked into right away prior to the time that the board could take a vote on that issue. So I think we could build in some flexibility on how that would actually work. You know, if the town administrator confirms that this is an issue that the attorney should look into, and or the mayor, that might be a good way to go about it. But in general, I think I support this, particularly given that, you know, when you do work for one board member, you know, that's just 1/6 of the vote, and you could be doing a lot of work for a minority position. So that's all I had to say. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. All right.
I have a
Yes.
question for you. What's the difference in adopting an ordinance versus a resolution, which is more binding?
Well, both are binding on the board, so there's no difference in that. An ordinance is required when you're going to impose penalties across the board for something or other. So a resolution would be applicable to this board and any board moving forward until that resolution were repealed. So they basically have the same effect here. A resolution is more typical of this kind of council procedure. I'll just say that. And most municipalities wouldn't codify something like this, but really I see no difference here. So you could do either one.
Okay. All right, again, we're back to, would somebody like to make a motion?
Sure, I'd like to make a motion that we recommend an ordinance be developed to implement board approval of legal fees while allowing the town administrator, mayor, police chief, and town clerk to incur these as they see fit in their jobs.
Would you like to put ordinance or resolution?
Yeah, we can look at both ordinance or resolution.
Okay. You have a second on that?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, next up is discussion and possible approval of congressionally directed spending requests. Well, unlike last time I came to you, because I came to you with $8 million worth of sewer repairs, and then upon investigating it, we'd have to go through the state revolving fund, and that just wasn't feasible. So anyhow, Stefan and I went out and looked at the old VOTEC building. This came up last year. And Stefan suggested that instead of doing affordable housing, because other people have been looking at this for affordable housing, and it would need to have water taps, it would need to have a lot of renovation to make it into affordable housing. that instead we make it into a municipal complex. So we would move the police department, the admin department, public works over to this building, so that all of it would be in place in this building. There would still be enough space to move the senior center over there, to do a community center over there, to maybe set up a daycare center over there, to even have spaces for some people to be able to rent office space in that building. Now, two of the objections that came up last year was, there was asbestos in the building. Turns out there isn't asbestos in the building, that when the mine went in there and started doing classes, they remediated the asbestos in the building. So the only asbestos left are the floor tiles in the two janitors' closets, which are, good God, not even the size of these tables, and the cafeteria. And the easiest way to deal with that is we just cover them up. You don't touch it, we just cover them up. And the other thing was the utility bills. And they were saying that the utility bills were running $35,000 a month and stuff like that. And it's like $14,000 a year. And we have utility bills from the last 2 years to prove that. So that's proposal one. And we could get, yes, for example, there's going to need to be a roof because there are some leaks. But we could get historical funding because that building was built the old part of that building was built in 1938. So it's a slam dunk, get it designated as a Colorado historical site or a historical building. And, we have famous, I think one of the requirements is famous people have graduated from it. And Stephen found some famous people, and I found the 1938. And so it was a general in World War II that graduated out of that building. So maybe Bobby Reedy qualifies too. But anyhow, so we get historical funds, we could get DOLA funds, we could get Colorado block grant funds, because if we are going to have a senior center there, then we would be exempt from other qualifications on block grant funds because it's a protected population. So we could get funds from OEDIC. One of the other things that we talked about, because there's a big commercial kitchen in there, we could do a business incubator in the back and let people who are food trucks and that kind of stuff go in there and use that commercial kitchen for their work. So it's got a lot of possibilities. This could really be a great asset for the town. It's got bays in the back where they can weld in the back of that, where they don't have a good place to weld right now. Public Works does not have a good place to weld. There's places to store trucks. It really would be a good asset for the town. And we were thinking about offering $1.5 million versus $2.5 million, which is what we were talking about last year. And the school would really, really like the town to own this. Very much so.
Mayor, we have a school board member here as well tonight. So.
Hello. And then the second request would be to go after the Department of Transportation. So the chances of so we talked to CDOT about the RAISE grant that is later on the agenda. And it's a huge grant program and everybody applies for RAISE grants. And so they were pretty discouraging about our chances of getting that grant. However, so the second thought was, let's apply through the discretionary funds for that same amount of money as well. And we can put in more than one discretionary spending request. So if we put in through the Department of Transportation for the money to cover the 15 grand, put in a request for the school, do one, do both, do none, it's up to the board. Do you have anything to add?
You covered quite a bit, but so one of the thing that's appealing to me is that there could be a municipal complex that would also free up buildings in our vibrant downtown area. So one of them being the Public Works building on 2nd Street that we would no longer need to hold on to. If you look at that piece of property, we store everything under kind of like a carport. And it's Corey can attest to it. It's pretty cold in that shop area, and it's really expensive to heat. We just got those bills as well. But looking at it as a municipal complex with a shop that not only has the ability for us to pull vehicles in to work on them, but also attach exhaust hoses to them so we can run them in the building as well and vent it out of the top. All of that's already existing in the area or within the building. You did talk a little bit about business incubation, and so there are some OED kind of things that are available. But the biggest goal here is to have something that could serve as a community center, house our municipal complex, and also possibly help bring industry into town, right? So one of the things I learned while serving on the North Fork Valley Creative Coalition's grant scoring is that we have industries coming to town like organic crayons, right? So that's kind of a neat industry that's going internationally. And so something like that can really benefit from having instead of having this be made out of their kitchen or their living room, but having a dedicated space where, industries could, for a nominal rent, be able to have a real address shop. So.
And there's money for that. That's the other thing. There's money for business incubation. There's money for job kind of stuff. There's money out there. And we have 2 years to tap into a whole lot of money.
So the biggest issue with the roof was in the gymnasium where it looked like every roof penetration. So that's where roof drain leaders were coming through. That seal around there was leaking. And so that's really where the leak is. I don't want to call that an easy fix, but at least it's identifiable that it's not that whole roofing system's failing. It's where you've put a hole in the roof for a drain. So that was kind of nice to see. There are windows that need to be changed out and certain remodeling that would need to happen. But all in all, it's a pretty nice space. I know that the school board did receive an offer. It was kind of weird timing. The way that we were thinking about it is I had sent an email to the realtor and had asked, hey, I think we're at a point where we can start discussing this so that we can craft an offer, unknowing that they had gotten an offer that day. So I don't know what that offer was or even, what's being proposed, knowing that in all of their advertisements, the realtor of the school the school district has been really clear that whatever you're proposing or planning to do has to be run through the town of Paonia. So I don't know what their plans are, but I think this would, what I'm proposing would be a little more palatable than what's been proposed in the past, like for affordable housing or things like that. So,
No, that's perfect. All right. So I'm going to open it up for public comment. Yes. Please state your name and where you live.
All right, I'm Jennifer McGavin. I live at 42822 Hidden Valley Drive. I'm the owner of 2 in-town commercial properties. I'm also president of the Hidden Valley HOA, which runs an out-of-town water company, which is connected to the Paonia Water. And I'm vice president of the school board. Speaking only as a business owner and a private citizen right now in front of you and in no other capacity. So the Energy Tech is up for sale for 2.5. You're proposing to buy the Energy Tech building for 1.5, 25% match, 75% from congressionally directed spending, and repurpose it into what you just said, town hall, offices, public works, etc., commercial kitchen, community center, new senior center. It's always more exciting up here than back there, trust me. And office spaces maybe for rent. So I'd like to review the resources Paonia currently has. We have a town hall of over 6,000 square feet, very nice town hall, about 40 years old. A library with community meeting rooms, 2 schools with rental possibilities. All you have to do is call. Teen center at the park with a full commercial kitchen, and a senior center that is probably nice. I haven't been in it. We also have many nonprofit and privately owned resources, such as Adicia, a community kitchen, which rents out privately, Blue Sage Center for the Arts, community space for rent. The Hearth is another brand new community space for rent, and it is beautiful if you haven't been down there. Harvester Building rents office space. The Linden Health Center also rents office space and healthcare professional space, and it's not rented out completely. North Fork Karate Studio rents space and also has 2 offices for rent. So I submit that for a town of 1,800 citizens, we have plenty of meeting spaces, kitchens, and offices for rent, especially since most people are working out of their homes now. There are 2 other issues I'd like to point out. The town should be spending any and all matching funds on completing all water projects in order to lift the tap moratorium. This would be of greater use to more citizens than moving offices at great expense to an older building with increased maintenance issues. 2, Paonia has a great need for housing. An in-town development or a pocket community would be a great way to develop the 2.5 acre space. As a matter of fact, you have a proposal in at this, I know it's almost done, but
What you're talking about.
right there.
Yeah, so.
For the congressionally directed spending. That you already proposed that I would not keep the building myself. I think we should start anew, but that's my own opinion. This pocket.
Wrap it up, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
So I would say, please do not submit a second proposal for congressionally directed spending in order to buy the energy tech for a new town hall. There are many alternatives available to you, which would not saddle you with this old building and would not appropriate funds for a property which the people already own.
Thank you.
That's not mine.
Okay. Other comments from the public? Yes.
Linda McCone, Second Street. I just need to point out that the senior center is not big enough for all the seniors who are coming there now. We had 25 people in an exercise class, which unfortunately is a little dangerous, even though it's really great. It's great that people are coming out. We do not have a commercial kitchen. We have a space occupied by sinks, a refrigerator, and no stove. So I would be personally delighted if there was a senior center under the auspices of the town. And I think the rest of the board would too, because we are all volunteers. And although we own the building, that's it. That's our money. So, so thank you for considering this. And I'm just gonna put my name in. Thank you.
Okay, would anyone else like to address the board? Yeah, Mr. King.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My name is Stephen Keenan, 514 Third. I think if the school district wants us to buy that school building. So if that's the case, I think some of the other properties that the school district has in downtown Paonia, such as the bus depot building, that should be given to the town too under very favorable terms. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah.
Christina Patterson, Price Road. This is a big endeavor and it should be nice. It sure would be nice if it went to the vote of the public. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. All right, seeing none other, all right, it's to the board. Discussion from the board.
Well, I'm still not convinced that there's no asbestos remediation, that there's tunnels underneath the length of the building, that piping and stuff underneath it. And one of the people in favor of this proposal said that there's nothing but cable under there, but what I'm told is that's where all the water, sewer, all those lines are covered with asbestos. So I still share that concern, but I have another lingering concern, and that concern is the capacity of staff to be able to handle it. I just don't think, as stretched as our staff is right now, in trying to get the water system together, trying to get all the other things we're trying to do. And now I have a new concern, and that is competing with the private sector. If there's that many offices that are available, and that many spaces that nonprofits want to make available, then all of a sudden we have this giant thing that the town is putting in that really competes with those private sector things. So I'm in favor of, my own impression right now is to vote against this. That's just me. I'm only one of seven.
Yeah.
Has the $1,500 or $1.5 million offer been accepted?
No,
That's
first
what
it has to come to
I've
the board. I mean, before we make any offer to the school district whatsoever, we have to.
heard. So we don't really know.
No, we don't.
There is asbestos money.
Yeah.
Grants for abatement on
I
that.
know it is. It's just expensive. It's more taxpayer money.
Yeah. Most of it's paid for with grants.
It's federal grants.
Federal
Where
grants.
do those grants come from?
I don't have the details. At CML last summer, they talked about that, the whole process. So this is very common.
Yeah.
Set of conditions. So I think we'd be fools not to go for this opportunity. It's more than just rentable space or commercial kitchen. It's about a community center, and it's about a place to do things. I've done a lot of things in town, and cramped is the word to describe about everything I've participated in. Folding chairs in the back, not enough space, 3 sessions during the day because we can't fit everybody in. So I think it'd be a great opportunity in a small town like this. We are not going to get very many. They don't come often. I mean, what you see is what you get. Things do change, but there aren't very many locations. Whereas in a bigger city, there are lots. Things come up all the time.
Yes, okay, trustee McGinnis.
Yeah, just a clerical question. So we're discussing submitting one or both requests for funds, but these requests are going to 2 different funds. So is it fair to say that they're relatively isolated from one another? So requesting funds from one source doesn't necessarily affect our request from another. Is that fair to say, or are these requests kind of tied in any way?
Well, they're tied in that they go through Senators Bennett and Pickett.
Okay. But yeah, just so I can kind of have the mental map of that. Yeah, and I think, throwing my 2 cents into the ring, I think there's a lot of value in consolidating our resources and where they are. And so having, all of Public Works being able to be operated out of one space instead of multiple locations throughout town. I don't know how many people have been in our police station, but it is very small. We have 6 officers that share one desk. And so cramped, I believe is the word of the evening currently. No, and so I think the question isn't necessarily will we be able to use that space well. I think it's a matter of can we feasibly at this point in time. Yeah, I think the remediation and or moving in and renovation of that building while we're trying to fix infrastructure issues perhaps is a real concern. I'm not sure the workload of staff and kind of availability to do that, but I think it's would be an asset to the town if we were to acquire it now.
Trustee Schwartz.
Okay, so I live directly across from the VOTEC, literally. I look out the door, I'm like, oh, this is my front yard. And I want to see the VOTEC develop more than anything in something that serves the community. And that being said, the thing that when I read this, I said, is there a bigger priority, like with the water? And if there's an opportunity, or water infrastructure, and if there's an opportunity for us to, we're gonna apply for something, like, should we go after securing our water supply? Whether or not we lift the moratorium, I'm waiting for the study to come out to help influence that, but really just protecting for the long term our water supply. So I'm curious, when you all were looking at potential projects, did you talk about that? It seems like we're so far along, like we have so much in place already. Would we want to go for that? Or maybe add it as a third project, since I think we can go up to 5 million. So I am curious about the water, and why would we not put in for water infrastructure?
So as far as water infrastructure goes, it would have to go through the state revolving fund, which is exactly where we are right now. The P&A that Mr. Nguyen put in the packet is our application to the state revolving fund for that. And we would have to meet exactly the same kind of criteria that we're meeting right now to get the water funding through congressional discretionary spending. And how much of that is going to be available or not, I don't know. That was one of the big reasons why I backed off on the sewer, is because the congressional discretionary spending has basically depleted all the state revolving funds sewer supplies and taken all that money. And again, they still have to meet the criteria and everything, but it's state revolving fund money. So it's not like there's this pot of money, you just go out there and it's amorphous and you go in. You have to go through an agency, you have to comply with those agencies to get this money.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And why couldn't, I think if we're going through the state revolving fund, why couldn't, I've missed a key point there can you say it again for me?
We are already so far along in the state revolving fund, we would have to start from scratch again.
Okay.
So we would be backwards.
So can I explain what the state revolving fund?
Sure.
So
yes,
there's a couple of different ways the state revolving fund works. This is specifically for the drinking water revolving fund, of which there's principal loan forgiveness through the state, right? Wastewater, that's done. There's no more principal loan forgiveness. Can't get it. There's still for drinking water. We have submitted it. It's in review with CDPHE. My understanding is that they're going to take the state, they being the state, we'll take a bunch of projects from different communities, add them together, sell bonds, and that's how they fund the drinking water revolving fund. Mm-hmm. So we're not bonding. The state's bonding. They're giving us this money through the state revolving fund. And then as we use that money for the projects, phase one of our water improvement plan is north of $7.2 million, of which principal loan forgiveness is on the table for that. So then I don't know enough about congressionally directed spending requests. I believe when you say congressional, I think that's federal?
Yes.
U.S. Congress?
It's 1% of the federal budget gets allocated to this, so that the senators and representatives can pull 1% of the budget for these discretionary projects.
So may I ask a follow-up question?
Please.
So with the state revolving loan fund, once we're in, we can't apply for other grants, like they are our own or other funding sources?
Well, no, we're still applying for them. So we're applying for like GIAF grants. And so those are, that's that energy impact funding. It's for.
It's state funding though. So that the money that comes for the state revolving fund comes from the feds.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
That's the funding source for that. It comes down. That's why if you're applying for water funds through discretionary spending, it is federal funds.
Okay.
So it impacts how much money the state then gets from those federal funds.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, so like all our grants from DOLA, that's state funding. So that we can't apply for discretionary spending for anything that we would get through DOLA. So we can still go ahead and apply for all our DOLA grants. It's only the federal programs that the discretionary funds can go for.
So they're not counterposed? For instance, the water bills, That's what we're getting at.
Right. So the funding for the water would come from federal funds. Then the building would also come from federal funds, but it's for the USDA for community building. There's actually a grant fund for community buildings in the USDA. And that's where we would go to.
And so the grant that was discussed earlier tonight, that's a federal raise grant, but it's through the United States Department of Transportation. So it's only meant for, street infrastructure and stormwater. I don't know if that helps.
Sure. Yeah.
I see this as a once in a lifetime chance for us to fix our infrastructure problems with the shops. The town shops are, let's say inadequate there's no word that is good enough. Inadequate's the only one I have. That those buildings are not very sound. They're gonna need some renovation soon. And we need some space. Our public works department is scattered around the whole town. And we tore down one of the buildings they were using to store things because it was damaged beyond repair. This is an opportunity to consolidate our public works there. And the other thing is the police department does not have room and will not have room unless we build another building. That's a major problem. We don't even have enough room to store evidence. I mean, that place is pretty clogged out. And sometimes cases go on for years, so it has to be stored. This place has some real possibilities. It also has some downsides. As far as the asbestos tiles, one of the easiest things to do is an epoxy coating over that whole thing. It's simple, self-leveling. It's not real cheap, but it's not real expensive either. I think the whole thing can be done easily for about 10 grand. And that's, pretty much peanuts to get rid of asbestos. As far as the tunnels, I didn't even know there were tunnels underground. I've lived here for 33 years and been in that building probably hundreds of times because that was the elementary school for a long time. And we were there all the time. So it's an opportunity, and it's once in a while. There is no other facility in this town or even outside of town that will give us the same opportunity without a major monetary cost. Should we acquire property out of town and build a building, we're talking probably the same amount of money for public works. And we're not going to get the same quality of building. Basically, everything that's built now is tin sheds. We don't build a brick building anymore. And it's centrally located. It's a good idea. I'm a little reluctant about the cost, but it's an opportunity cost too. And as far as competing with the private sector, we don't have to compete with the private sector. We have no facility in this town where we can have an event and you can have catering done in that event. As much as I love the Blue Sage, there's no opportunity or any place to put some kind of a food service thing in there. So everything is brought in, and as a past caterer, that's a real problem and very expensive, labor-wise and otherwise. If nothing else, a senior center and a community center with a commercial kitchen is an awesome addition. This kitchen in here was used for many years by the Rotary, but it no longer functions. So we have several organizations that could use it right away. The commercial kitchen in the teen center is restricted very much to the teen. It's a teen center. We're not supposed to expand the use of it into a community center. And that's it's deeded that way. And it has its own governing body. So I think this is an opportunity. I do grit my teeth when I see the amount of money it is, but I think it's a once in a lifetime opportunity, and it will be an asset to the community forever.
Yes, this one.
So, even though it has 15 or 1.5 million is what we know we'd be asking for the purchase price, the 25% match, that doesn't bother me, that's easy money to find. To me, it's the build out. So the Third Street Center over in Cardinal, anybody has been over there, that was a remodeled elementary school. And when I worked for SEI, we had our offices there and just seeing everything that went into that space. I feel comfortable that if we decide to move in this way, we're to apply for these congressionally, that would be, directed funding, that we know that we have a lot of details to work out. And this is just the tip of the iceberg of the money that we have to raise. But I also think that this is a huge opportunity for the town. If we can't go for water, we might as well try. Similar to other opinions, when I read this, I said, I don't want to compete with the private sector. There are commercial kitchens in town, but all of those details can be worked through. But we just have to decide, do we want to make this initial? And it's a long shot. We know that. But why not try? Even if we don't have all the details figured out.
And that's the other thing is, I mean, we don't have to do this immediately. I mean, we obtained the property. We do, we rent it out because there's already an ESL classroom in there where people are renting, and CDOT rented space out at building when 133 was down. So, if we own it, we can rent properties, office space to people as they need it. And we could move the senior center over there relatively easily, considering where they're at now and the facilities now. It would be, the building as is would be a big improvement. But we don't have to do major renovations right away. And it wouldn't take major renovations. That's the thing. It's in good shape. And the classrooms and things, we could accommodate a lot without doing a lot of work on it. And the other thing about the event, having that gymnasium, having been on the board and we're in the Blue Sage for almost a year, one of the things that we ran into is we ran out of space at the Blue Sage. We had, even when we packed all the chairs in there that we couldn't get more than 144 people in there, and we outgrew that. And the same with the Paradise. They outgrew that. And there was actually a couple of people in town that were looking to build an event center outside of town that could accommodate bigger events. So here, we have a gym, if town buys this, we have a gymnasium that we could have bigger events in it. And it's a community center, so it would be for the community and be part of the town too. So that's my 2 cents back. Yeah.
Okay, I just want to say, so when I ran at Solar Energy International, we would bring about 75 people in a year for our annual instructor training. And the only place that we could find that could accommodate us was the Votech. And it was, we have, lots of other spaces, but none that are big enough for those types of events. And it was awesome.
Yeah. Philanthropy Days ran out of that building. Yep. So it has potential. All right. So would somebody like to make a motion? Or is there more to say?
Don't look at me.
Yeah, I don't make motions, so.
I will make a motion.
Thank you, Kathy.
I will make a motion that we move forward with applying for the congressionally directed spending request for 1.5 million for the purchase of the Votech building at 4th and Grand, and $1,513,908 for the U.S. Department of Transportation to complete the 5th and Grand Avenue reconstruction project, Safe Pathways for Paonia.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
All right, that motion passes. Thank you. We will move forward on that. All right, next up is approval of purchase of IW or Q system. I don't know what that is. iWork.
So thank you to Sam for writing this report, because I was inundated with the town administrator report. So we did a demonstration of this. I've used this software previously as well. What it integrates, the one thing I didn't know is it integrates with TextMyGov. So what it can do is if somebody were to text, hey, by the way, TextMyGov is live. If you haven't signed up yet, please do. We've already received at least one request for service, and I think it was legitimate. So it was legitimate. It's graffiti on a stop sign. So now we have it. But what this does is it can integrate with this software called iWork that will generate a work order and send it to Public Works. Corey can then assign it, Corey or Ruben, or me, I guess, can assign it to who it needs to go to. It can also, this software will also track our inventory. So if we are using a certain amount of cold patch, we can track how much cold patch is used for a pothole. Like let's say we get a pothole come in, generates that work order. We can fill that pothole. Then we can attach who's been assigned to it, and we can track how much that pothole cost us to fix. So, and then also track inventory in real time. Let's say there's somebody's got a service line break or something with their water system. We can generate a work order, track the life of that work order, who's been assigned that work order, and then what materials were used for that. The cost is actually $7,000 to be split up between 4 different funds, all in public works. That's an annual fee. It's a lot cheaper than what I'm used to, and they scale back based on population size and budget. So what we saw in this demonstration, I learned things that I didn't know were capable as far as like asset tracking and tracking inventory. So that's my spiel on iWork. The really neat thing is that iWork purchased TextMyGov. That's why they integrated them to generate work orders. So that's something new that I wasn't aware of. And I think it presents a pretty neat opportunity.
Comments from the public?
I did have one more.
Oh, sorry.
Corey's biggest thing was fleet management. So we can track what is necessary for maintenance on all of our fleet, not only within Public Works, but also within the police department. So we can track, tire rotation needs to happen, brakes need to be changed, oil needs to be changed, the chassis on the backhoe needs to be lubed, every 2-3 weeks. It can track and generate work orders for a mechanic and for a Public Works department. So it's a pretty intuitive software as far as that's concerned.
Okay, again, comments from the public. Okay, seeing none, comments from the board.
So it sounds like a big potential jump in productivity and efficiency.
So yes, and tracking. So the biggest concern that Corey has presented both to myself and Sam is how do I track or schedule these things aside from just trying to set a calendar reminder in Outlook. And that's what this program aims to do. Not only track it, schedule it, but also attach a cost associated with these different projects. So it would be drilling down a little bit deeper into like your budget line items that we see for like vehicle repair and maintenance. We see that we've budgeted this amount of money, but now we can drill down to say, hey, most of the Public Works line item for repairs and maintenance went to these 2 vehicles, and they're pretty old. Maybe it's time to get rid of them and purchase new because we're going to continue to invest way too much money in repair and maintenance. So to answer your question, yes, it should help with productivity and efficiency, but it'll also help us track better our assets and what we're spending on.
Other discussion from the board? Yeah, Trustee Knudsen?
I'm laughing because when we input the fleet management thing, they're going to tell us everything. There's only 2 vehicles we shouldn't replace, and those are the 2 trucks we bought last year. Because everything in the police department is going to be like a 10 on a 100-point scale. A lot of equipment in our shop and stuff. So it's going to be a real wake-up call about what the standard is, because this software really looks at mileage, use, hours, all those kind of things. And really, it's going to be a huge wake-up call for just what the status of our fleet is. It looks like it's pretty neat. I'm a little concerned about, garbage in, garbage out. Who's going to be responsible for doing the input? How do we make sure that the input is accurate? It's those kind of things where, same concern I had over the VOTEC building is staffing and, the amount of time it takes, because implementing new software is not easy. And then typically there's updates and stuff that go along with it. So I think having a designated responsible person in each department that has to run it would kind of be, one way to get after it. Anyway, I'm in favor of it. I thought the demos were really good, and it just scared the heck out of me when I looked at the fleet. And the way it was yeah, I was like, oh, watch out.
But Dave, we bought tools last year.
We bought
so
two
we have some tools.
They like our tools, yeah, they like our tools, and they like those 2 trucks. That's it.
Yes, Ms. Rose.
Okay, I had the similar concern about having better organizations where you purchase new software. It's like, wow, this is going to solve all of our problems, and then it just sits. And how committed are the staff to this? I know you're very enthusiastic, Town Administrator Lynn. How committed are the staff? And do you think that this will actually be used? And I see Sam's hand.
Yes,
He raised his hand as well.
All right, well, that's Sam, and then we'll be Corey.
I'm going to say exactly what I was already.
Okay, Corey.
I just wanted to say we spend as much time now trying to track everything. If we can, once it's implemented, if it saves us any amount of that time, it will free us up for a lot of other things. And just that we can schedule recurring stuff and that with it, it will free me up for more useful things, I guess, is kind of my outlook on it. It will take some legwork to set up. But once set up, it'll save us a bunch of time.
So I would say, have you been in my department meetings? Because I've been saying this about garbage in, garbage out. And so that's why we've taken a lot of time with our audit as well. So.
Just kind of clerical question. So the $7,000 is a yearly price. Is that at all introductory, or should we expect that $7,000 to just be kind of the price of this from here on out?
So in my experience with iWork, they've normally adjusted their price every year. I don't think I've ever seen the price increase over 7.5%.
Okay.
So it's just something that we would normally have to budget for.
Okay.
Yes.
They haven't run a fleet maintenance program before. This is invaluable. We didn't have computers in those days, and we did it by hand. And I spent the majority of my time tracking maintenance and whether it was done or not, and making sure it wasn't pencil whipped, which, that tends to be when you have a very large organization. I had a little over 200 guys. So this really could save. I can see where it's very useful. And then with the streets department, especially with our pothole situation, which is, I was going to complain about it in announcements, but I decided not to complain. It's just, stuff gets out of hand and it gets missed. And if we can track projects so that they're followed through with, did this get done? And it's automatic. It comes up on the screen every day. This is a great deal.
Okay. Would somebody like to make a motion?
Can I give one more thing? I know it sounds like it's going to go, but one of the neat things is that iWork also operates off an app. So if and when we get city or town-owned cell phones, that app can be pre-installed. And if somebody's going to get into a vehicle, so a police officer is going to get into a vehicle, they can go through and do their pre-trip inspection. So they can make sure that tires are good, that there's no lights on the dash flashing, and all of those things have to be hit before they start their shift. And so that was another very interesting thing that we never took advantage of in my last community that I think is pretty important here. So It's especially for like officer safety or like our public works guys who get into sort of a manual truck, pickup truck in operation, which can't wait till it goes to auction.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the iWork service agreement and the iWork program.
All right, a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes.
Thank you.
Next, consideration of approval of ordinance 2024-01, amending chapter 7 and 10 of the Paonia Municipal Code. Chief Lamminger.
Yeah, so the background here is really we've identified several ordinances that needs to be updated and or combined or added, something that we don't have at all. So we really just wanted to simplify this ordinance and not just to create paperwork for Nick, but because we have the website where you can go and look at the ordinance. So our officers write you for an ordinance. The number goes on the citation to community court, but you can also go look at that number on the town website and read the ordinance word for word, exactly what the officer should be explaining to you, to understand what the violation was, what the penalty was. The three that we tackled on this first go were the inoperable vehicles. And really the priority on that was clarification of the inoperable vehicle. What constitutes an inoperable vehicle? What leads our officers to believe that vehicle is inoperable? Whereas before it was somewhat vague. And the other thing we really wanted to tackle on that was identifying if you have an inoperable vehicle on a public right of way or on a setback. So as to not just identify when it's an inoperable vehicle in the front yard, which would be code enforcement, but would be handled different than an inoperable vehicle parked on the street on blocks. And that's what we wanted to do, is simplify that and give clarity and direction with that. That was on inoperable vehicles. The animals running large, we had two existing similar sections, animal running large and leash required. Very similar ordinances. The difference was one was a citation or a fine. The other was a summons into municipal court. They read very similar. We wanted to combine that. The other thing we wanted to do was identify some loopholes that have kind of popped up over the years since these were established, particularly with chickens or rabbits in town, and identify the animal at large statute. That if they're not going to be contained on your property, they do need to be on a leash, with the exception of cats. We kind of carved that out so that everybody doesn't have to take their cat out on a leash. But that was really just to combine those two, reduce community code a little bit, make it a little easier to read. The third one was open fire prohibited. This is a new addition because we don't currently have anything addressing fires. What we use to address fires or burning in town is under our nuisance ordinance, and it's very vague. It really just explains to the officer, and it leaves a very open interpretation that if he deems it to be a nuisance or unsafe, then he would use the nuisance ordinance. That's not necessarily fair to the officer or the community in general because they don't understand. I didn't think it was a nuisance. I just wanted to have a little fire in my backyard versus the smoke we're dealing with and everything else involved with that. That's why we wanted to establish an open fire is prohibited specific ordinance. Now, part of that was really getting the crux of open fire versus contained fire, right? The county has restrictions on open fires. You need to call the burn light. What we want to do is really eliminate that open fire altogether in town. So if you're going to have a fire in town, it will be contained in a chimney, as you'll see in the definitions, a chimney or a fire pit. There was restrictions on those as well. While we're discussing that, it was also brought to our attention by Trustee Smith that there's a type of fire pit called a solo stove, I believe. And the way a solo stove wouldn't actually fit the way that Nick and I had first constructed this. So we may ask at this time that language be added. And the reason the solo stove is different is because in our language, it's front load for a chimney, and a solo stove is actually the top load. The reason I believe when I looked at this further, a lot of municipalities kind of excluded that top load was to eliminate burn barrels. And our intent would be that if we were going to allow something like the solo stove, which I think we should, that's pretty common, that we would want to just indicate through our verbiage that it was designed for a fire, whereas a barrel is not. And Nick can clarify a little more on that as we go, but that's something that we would be open to adding as well in our open fire code.
Okay, anything else? Okay, comments from the public? Okay. Question from the board, discussion from the board.
Well, are we gonna try and herd cats?
Okay.
And seriously, why is there any reference to cats at all? Because no one can really control their cats. And by having it in there, it just kind of brings up the issue. There is an issue in the neighborhood I live in where a lot of people have wildlife sanctuaries. And they designated the yard as a wildlife sanctuary, and their neighbors let their cats run all over the neighborhood. And it drives the people that really try to have the sanctuaries nuts. But I don't know what you can do about that except neighbors talking to each other.
Yeah, the cat issue, as our neighbors are finding out, is very hot button topic. But part of the reason we kind of carved out, at least in my mind, we carved out cats is it doesn't seem fair. We want to make it simple, especially for the community. It doesn't seem fair that we would write somebody a citation for having their dog off leash when the neighbor's cats, as you just explained, would be required to be on the leash. It's just not enforceable. We wouldn't necessarily apply that same standard to both people. So it's easier for us to go in and carve that out right away. Now, cats running loose could still be constituted as a nuisance, right? We still kind of have a catch-all if that were to be a problem. Also, in the future, we will have an ordinance coming to you about restriction on the number of pets in town. So that's another opportunity for us to kind of hone in on cats in particular, but animals in general as well.
Questions, comments from the board? Yes.
I don't know why I felt so passionate about this issue, but inoperable vehicles, it seems to me that 72 hours is not long enough. I guess I was thinking about people in town who fix their cars themselves, or maybe they don't have the money right now, but maybe there's someone like myself who has a car and I can only keep my car parked in front because I don't have a garage, I don't have an enclosed space. And if my car was broken or whatever, I mean, it's 72 just seems crazy short. And could we be a little bit more flexible with people and include that into a code? And I am not a mechanic at all. It just felt too onerous of a thing to enforce. And I know it hasn't changed. I think the 72 is already in there, but I'd like to extend that to make it longer, like up to 30 days.
Yeah, so the part of what we have with the inoperable vehicle in the 72 hours would be if it's parked on the street and is an inoperable vehicle and we leave it for 30 days, well, we have parking restrictions as well, 72 hours. So it's going to fall under either one. And the inoperable vehicle would constitute, and typically the way we would apply this, and the reason we wanted to make it a little more practical was the first step with any of these code enforcement violations is really a discussion with the owner. What is going on? What seems to be the issues, or something we can help you with? If it's something that's going to take them longer, and absolutely we can work with them on that. But if it's a residence where we have 4 vehicles on blocks, all on our easement between the street and the sidewalk, it makes it difficult to give them 30 days, particularly if they move their vehicles in an order. But yeah,
Can I offer something? So Matt, as a point of clarification, Chief, as a point of clarification, underline means new, stricken means removed, right, in this ordinance. And so I think the definition of an inoperable vehicle is pretty important here. It says it means any motor vehicle that does not have a current license plate and validation sticker lawfully affixed thereto. So it's not just that it's inoperable for 30 days, but it's also not something that has been registered to be able to operate on the roadways in the state of Colorado. So I think that would be a pretty important distinction as well. I don't know if that.
Trustee Stelter?
And one of the things, we don't have inspection stickers here, but one of the things we have it is required that we have insurance. So if the car is not licensed and insured, that's an inoperable vehicle, even if it's licensed and it's not insured. It has to have insurance. to be parked on the public street. And I think to change that language would be a minor change, but it would be more practical for us, unless we institute an inspection sticker or a validation sticker program.
And to point out, we've worked with people in the past. We had an individual who had to work on his vehicle in the park. And we don't typically allow people to pull into the park and work on their vehicles. They were traveling, however, and it was really the only option we had at the time. So, like most of our municipal ordinances, it will be applied on a case-by-case basis, but this gives us a good starting point.
Yeah, Trustee Valentine.
How would we enforce the household trash characterization? And I'm just trying to picture the time it takes to get there and figure it out when it's sort of all burned down. There's been an increase of nasty sort of Iraqi war burn pit stuff going on the east end of town. And that's got fairly well documented, health effects. But it's quick. They know what they're doing.
Yeah, so like a lot of our ordinances, we're really going to be relying upon other members of the community. If an officer is driving through an alley and sees something, then he may want to get out, speak with the homeowner. But we're really dependent upon the neighbor calling and saying, my neighbor has a fire right now. The smoke is intoxicating, it's spraying my entire house. And that's kind of what we're dealing with right now and applying that under our nuisance ordinance. But it is dependent upon the officer showing up and being able to interpret what it is that's being burned. Is it plastic jugs, is it motor oil, what is it? But like a lot of things in our line of work, it's going to be the officer's interpretation and being able to not just identify it, but describe it and stand behind it if we're going to write them a citation for that. Whether that's body camera footage, statements made by the owner, things of that nature.
Can I make a suggestion for vehicles? So I see where Trustee Swartz was talking about, and that's in section B of, where it says 72 hours. Chief, would it be okay to say like 96, that's 4 days, or 120, that's a full 5?
Yeah, absolutely. These, we're constructed, Nick and I worked on these and credit due to Joanne Katz, where she put an incredible amount of time reaching out to other municipalities, constructing these. And so we brought them here, and part of this process is to get feedback on them. We're absolutely with that. These are not set in stone. We're just trying to clarify things and make them easier to understand for everybody.
Trustee Swartz.
Okay, let's see. Can you clarify, so in section A, it says the presence of an inoperable vehicle. And just so you know, all my vehicles are working. Okay, the presence of an inoperable vehicle or partially dismantled vehicle, parts thereof, on public or private property in violation of this section is declared a public nuisance. Are we going to enforce this on private property?
We have been hesitant to apply code enforcement like this, specifically to private property due to the issues we have with access to private property. Nick, maybe able to clarify a little on that. Yeah, we've dealt with this before.
Yeah, Nick?
Yeah, so public nuisance is a legal term of art. So it doesn't necessarily impact whether something is on public or private property, if that's part of your question, trustee. But yes, the intent is that inoperable vehicles cannot be stored on private property either, unless they're stored in a way that's specifically permitted under this section. And Matt can get more to the policy reasons for that, but that is the intent of the ordinance.
Can I offer a point of clarification? So these are like junk ordinances, right? So it's an accumulation of junk is an eyesore to the community. And the way that I've dealt with this in the past for like code enforcement is If it's behind a privacy fence or screened in some manner on private property, we're not looking to go take somebody's car, right? If it's in a front yard or blocking a sidewalk. So that's a big problem around town. If you look, is vehicles parked along the sidewalk because the driveway is not long enough. I hit my garage door every day trying to get on the sidewalk. So I make way for that. But that's kind of not what we're talking about, right? You're bringing up a pretty valid point. If it's on private property, screened, there's no harm, no foul, right? And so I think Nick does, that's how I've done code enforcement before with like junk vehicle. I'm sorry, cars with historic value.
Well, junked vehicle is still terminology that's so that's fine too. So this does allow for screening, but it's more specific than that, Stefan, and it's just covering it with a one-piece opaque heavy tarp or commercial car cover securely fastened at all times. And if the board is open to other methods of screening, then that's something that there could be more general language added there. This was just some language from an example ordinance that we looked at, and certainly we're considering the ideas of screening vehicles as we're drafting this.
I just have one more question.
Go for it.
I don't know why, but this is, okay, so there's a person I know who has this really cool, inoperable, vintage car sitting in their yard. In this case, it would be inoperable and they could get a citation. Is that a true statement?
Yeah, depending on the circumstances, like most of our contacts, right?
Yeah.
If it's a vehicle and we contact them, is this something you want to be working? Again, it's on private property. We have been very, very reluctant for something like this on private property due to the access issues we have with just walking on a private property to enforce that. But that would be a discussion we would have with the property owner. And the other part of this to note is a lot of our code enforcement issues, we tend to wait until we get a complaint to address it. Our guys don't drive around all day looking for code enforcement violations because we have a lot of them. We really rely on the neighbors, this is what we have, it's kind of how we're operating. Yes, I'm aware that they go flowers out or something along those lines, right? That's a common sense issue that we wouldn't want to have to get up and defend our action in front of a municipal judge. I moved the tree into my office so I don't see the semi truck blocking the intersection.
Can I respond to that as well? I think so the idea here is that inoperable vehicles, I guess we could just say a vehicle that doesn't work, that's not capable of being driven or used for that intended purpose. People might have other intended purposes for cars, they just want to keep them on their property for parts to use on another one of their vehicles, etc. So we've given some exceptions in this ordinance for that purpose. One being that screening, if it's in a garage, that's okay. If there's just one vehicle on the property covered with that tarp, that's okay. We might be able to build in some flexibility, as discussed before, to place a privacy fence or something that blocks the view from the right of way and also from the neighbors. That gets a little trickier because then you're essentially creating a fully enclosed structure if you don't want anyone to see it, right? So maybe that exception is already there. So I think that's what we're intending to get at, right? I mean, the eyesore is really what most municipalities are trying to address when they adopt ordinances like this. And zoning takes care of some of these issues too. If people want multiple junked vehicles, really they should be owning a salvage yard and not putting them in their front yard, for example. So that's kind of what we're getting at here. I think that this ordinance, one of the things that I just wanted to discuss briefly was it was raised, the open fire, parts of the ordinance, if you'll allow me to just move on to that for 1 second. We did receive some comments back from Trustee Smith, and some comments from a citizen on that. As it turns out, there are some, in addition to the issue that Matt raised about the chief raised about solo stoves. I think that issue can be taken care of by removing permanently affixed from the definition of fire pit. However, the other issue is that there is a state permitting requirement for the burning of vegetative wastes, and woody plants. And this ordinance wouldn't excuse compliance with state law regulations and any permit regulations, but the ordinance could do a bit better to acknowledge and better align with those state regulations. So at this point, I think it might be best for the board to consider letting us take another crack at that particular section of this ordinance. That's section 5. And as the chief said, we're going to be bringing back another ordinance at a future board meeting too, that we could cover that issue in. So that might be a good way to go about this, to consider adopting this ordinance without that section 5, so that we can then take that back into consideration, make a few changes, and get it back in front of you. So that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Well, it seems to me we also have issues with so if we increase the 72 hours to whatever, 120 or whatever we decided on that. And then add screening of some kind for the inoperable vehicle besides just the tarp. But again, that parsing that, because to build a shed around a car, again, you're building a shed. So it seems like we need a little work on that as well.
This is the first time that you've seen this ordinance, and it was intended to be brought up for feedback. So, Chief, are you looking for approval tonight or just?
Feedback was really, I mean, this is the first of several that we've identified. And the other parts of this are that the way our ordinance is constructed, a lot of these things are they're kind of intertangled, which makes it difficult. For example, if our parking ordinance states public parking 72 hours, but our inoperable vehicle states 96, then instead of having 72 hours of parking, we would just say, well, my vehicle's inoperable to gain more time to park. So, like I said, they tend to be intertwined, which makes it difficult. And that's kind of, part of this process of getting in front of everybody and getting feedback on it. But little changes can have big repercussions throughout.
Yeah, Trustee Pete.
I've watched a couple mechanical events happening over the last year or so. One of those on 2nd Street, where the person's parked the vehicle they're working on in between the sidewalk and the street itself, which I assume is public right of way. So that is not permissible under this. The second thing I've noticed is when you drive down 3rd Street and you get to Minnesota and you want to make a left, you will find a vehicle on the right that has part of the transmission removed, and it's fully inoperable right now. So one of the concerns when, having done my own mechanical work is sometimes you can't get the parts and stuff. So it is behoven it's required by a person under this ordinance that if you can't get it done in 5 days, you got to move it off the street. Is that what we're saying? Just, you can't have.
That was our focus.
I mean, that's what kind of bugs me is like, first of all, you're usually laying under the car with your legs out on the street anyway, which is a hazard, but, basically get the dang thing fixed and get it off. And I'm also wondering, there's a question for Nick, can a car feasibly be an ADU?
Oh, God.
That's a great question for our next meeting.
Just kidding.
Whatever. I was gonna try to give some sort of response, Dave.
Trustee McGinnis?
Yeah, I just wanted just to call attention to the kind of allowance of 72 hours really it only applies to minor repair and maintenance. And so even if you are, let's say you start a transmission project, I don't know that that would necessarily fall under the requirements of the 72-hour allowance anyways. Yeah, and so I think the idea of allowing for larger projects to happen, even if we extended it to 4 or 5 days, if it's not a minor project, it doesn't apply to that subsection anyways. So
Thank you.
I feel comfortable with the 72 hours is for that.
So it seems like what we're saying is take it back to the drawing board, Trustee Stilton.
One of the things that we're requiring it to be in a structure. And one of the things about that is that means there's no car that will fit in a structure that does not have to be permitted. And so you're going through the permit process, you have setbacks, you've got all the other things. If it's in the backyard, screened from public view, I think that's good enough.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you shouldn't be able to store a motor vehicle within the setbacks of your yard. Because if it catches fire for whatever reason, the setbacks are there so that the fire department and it protects your neighbor from the fire that's there. That's why we have setbacks. It's not because we like the way it looks. It's a safety factor. And old junk cars do just spontaneously combust. So they get a short circuit and woof. And they're full of gas. 30 gallons of gas makes a hot fire. And if it's right next to your neighbor's house, it's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
So it sounds like.
And I'll point out too that our current inoperable ordinance also requires your vehicle to be in a garage. It does that now, we already have that. We're not really enforcing that private property. Again, the focus on this, and kind of as I put in there was that the public right of way and our setbacks. That's really what we're trying to get at. We've had multiple instances with public works where we've had an inoperable vehicle parked on a right of way to move and then to get off of that right of way. This is our means.
So it sounds like this needs to come back, get a little revision and then come back to the board.
Mayor, can I offer some suggestions? Yes. So Nick, can I see consensus on 72 hours or longer?
Yes.
Okay, so do we have a consensus that 72 hours is okay? Okay. And then Mayor, if I could offer a motion that you bring this, you ask staff to bring this back to the next meeting.
Okay.
So it doesn't languish.
Good. Yeah. Would you like to make that motion?
I'd like to make a motion of this, these ordinances being brought back next.
Have a second.
Or I'm not gonna.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, next up is consideration to approve submission of a Safe Pathways for Paonia Raise grant to U.S. Department of Transportation. Okay.
My apologies. I thought this was earlier in the agenda. It was in my staff report, but this is the one I was referring to for U.S.
Yeah, so anyhow, so even though CDOT says, I don't know if you're going to get it, it's mostly written. We're going to, CDOT has agreed to look it over and give us feedback on it. So if we have two pathways to get this money, maybe we'll get it.
In addition to that, we had a meeting last week that the mayor put together with the executive director of CDOT, and she agreed to give us a letter of support, even though they have state projects that they're also seeking for this grant funding. So I don't know what kind of poll she's got, but apparently it's pretty good. So.
We're buds. We bonded over the poll on 133.
But that is coming from the executive director of CDOT as a letter of support for this project.
I'm hoping we have a good chance. All right, can we get a motion, or is there public comment? All right, seeing none.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the submission of a Safe Pathways for Paonia Department of Transportation raise grant in the amount of $1,513,908.
A second.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, next up is consideration appointing town administrator to represent the town at the Pan American Property Association. Yeah, Owners Association.
So it's really easy. I went to the Minnesota Creek annual meeting with a few of you. It was Stewart Ditch. Yeah, that's right, Stewart Ditch. It was Stewart Ditch. And it voted, it was fine. I don't mind doing it again, so.
Having been a board member of Pan American, I would want to caution the board that if we're putting our town administrator in this position, he will have
Oh, God.
Race Oreos.
Feedback from the public. All right. Anything from the board?
Did you read the minutes of the meeting? Come on.
All right. Aside from boring her town administrator to death.
Yeah, and I don't know, every once in a while, we kind of add a new duty or a new hat to our town administrator's plate. I think it's prudent of us to really recognize how much that we are placing on his plate. And I personally am kind of trusting Stefan Wynn to tell us when it's enough. And so I'd just caution the board that, you know, while it may seem like one straw, eventually.
Yeah.
So just,
Can we get a motion, please?
I appreciate it, Mayor, and if I can, I appreciate that. There are some things that I'm gonna have to meet with this board about anyway. And so this one, I was like, yeah, I should probably introduce myself to them because there's gonna be some street things that have to come up that have been requested by the county. So I need to meet them.
All right. Can I have a motion?
I'd like to move that the town administrator represent the town of the Pan American Property Owners Association and tell them to fix the dang irrigation system that ruined our Apple Valley Park.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
do we need to revise that?
Second part.
Well, is that?
Lock the second part off. That was kind of a joke. In reality,
Okay.
the back part of Apple Valley Park has been flooded year after year after year, and it's the Pan American, really chintzy, thin-walled PVC pipes that are leaking like crazy, causing the problems.
Okay.
And
I won't do it during a public meeting. I want to meet them first.
All right, we have a motion to appoint the town administrator to represent the town at the Pan American Property Owners Association. Okay.
Can we have a second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Last but not least, consideration of appointing the town administrator as the town representative for the Paonia Ditch Company annual meeting.
This one I do have to attend.
Oh, yeah.
And so, because there's a conflict with our existing project with the Fifth Grant realignment. And so I do want to be there to meet with Olin and some of their other members, so.
Is there a public comment?
Yes, comments from the public? All right, seeing none.
I'd like to make a motion that we appoint the town administrator as town representative of the Paonia Ditch Company.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes.
And they should fix our irrigation system too.
Oh, they got.
No, that one I made.
All right. I don't have a report. I don't think trustees have a report, so.
Mayor, I'm sorry, I'm not a trustee, so please,
Oh, go ahead.
investigation is complete with the state park. They were town employees and we will repair it. There will be some discussion tomorrow.
Okay, all right, thank you for that clarification. All right.
I just want to say, maybe I should have done this under acknowledgements, but I'm so excited about Text My Gov. Congratulations, staff. And I can't wait to do a big marketing campaign to get people using this because it's going to be awesome.
That brings up a question I had, and we don't necessarily have to answer this question fully right now, but how do you sign up?
It's really easy. Ruben, do you know the number? Hang on, I've got it. So I did it last night, and then I'm glad I did it, because we did find some errors that need to be corrected, and as soon as Ruben got me corrected, I'm on the fly. But if you text info to, what is it? If you text Paonia info, one word, Paonia info to 91896, you get signed up.
Is that it?
That's it, and it'll take you from there, so.
Say that again, please.
It's one word, Paonia info 91896. And we did so Ruben just informed me, we also got a Text My Gov report on the skate park, but it will be taken care of.
And I was able to respond during the meeting.
Oh.
Let me know, we discussed it in the meeting.
Perfect.
While you guys are all looking at that, if you guys wouldn't mind me just telling you, Deputy Clerk Santiago took this and ran with it. He got it all set up on our thing. He met with them weekly. This is 100% his project. He knocked it out.
All right, well, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody, once again. No, I think I did it that way too.
It's at the Shadow's house, you know.